Hello everyone, welcome back to Yield Today with Dallin Camlin. Today we're going to be talking about three cool little analogies that I've thought a lot about when it comes to starting a business. These things will kind of give you a little bit more perspective on the work that's required for starting a business, maintaining it, and also the joys that can result from sticking with it. And I recently came out with that Google form that I talked about in the last episode. So if you'd like to provide some feedback for me of what you think of the show, you can do that. You can find that in the show notes of this episode and the last episode. Really would appreciate any feedback that you can give me. With that, let's jump into the episode. The first big one is like having a baby. So I'm not a parent yet, but I do remember starting my first YouTube channel, and in a way it was kind of like my baby. And how I treated it from that moment, how I thought about it, all those different things influenced how much work I put into it. And I think this is a really good analogy to think of because business can bring a lot of joy to us because we get to do things that we have been wanting to try out, but it also takes a lot of work. It also takes a lot of research. And the same thing goes with a baby as well. From as far as I can tell, I have, a lot of younger siblings. You do all this research, you do everything you can, but then it finally happens and you have to just dive into it and need to make the most of it because the baby needs nutrition, the baby needs love, the baby needs time, and all the while, all these memories are being made. And so it's really important to celebrate those little things that the baby does, like walking and everything like that. And I think we are so quick to praise those things like that, but not so much to praise all the little things that happen with us when we're starting a business. We're like, oh, I'm not going to celebrate until I make my first dollar. I mean, that's cool and all, but you really should celebrate the fact that you can even start a business and that you have gotten your website up. All those little things, leads to those big things. And another quick part about this is there's like a season for everything. There's like the point when they're like toddlers and you treat them differently when they're toddlers. You talk to them differently and you work on helping them out differently. They play a different part in your life, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You probably don't put as much time into them. Actually, you probably do. But in business, from what I can tell, you just have to be on your guard. You have to constantly be looking out for them. And then they grow and they can learn and stuff on their own. The second quick analogy I wanted to bring up is the thought of being in a field and being like a farmer. A farmer is always going to plant his seeds in the beginning, during those beginning seasons, because otherwise they're not going to get a harvest later on. And those seeds are their livelihood. Until those seeds bear fruit, they really aren't of that much value. And so the farmer is going to keep taking care of them until they bear that fruit. It's going to nourish them over time and give them all the love and attention that they need so they can grow. With us being business owners, or however you might be in your life, you have these different skills and you can choose to work on those and they can become more valuable and bless the lives of more people. And it's kind of one of those things, you don't really know what it's going to lead to, but you do it anyway. That's how I feel with my writing. I've been pretty consistent at writing for years, and it doesn't seem like it's led to a ton, but I've helped some people and I've enjoyed it, and it's definitely giving me more clarity of thought. But again, with patience, this definition I've been sharing recently is it's the assurance that there's going to be a harvest, knowing that I'm going to plant the seed today, knowing that it's going to come tomorrow, not tomorrow, but someday it will pay off. And so that's kind of like when you're making your first videos, your first blog posts, you're just trying to get the ball rolling. You're just trying to get your field worked on. And you know that overall, ultimately, it's going to pay off. And at the very least, you'll have a good time doing it. The final analogy I wanted to bring up had to do with running and fitness. You have to show up and you have to put the time in. And recently I listened to this podcast episode from the Creating a Brand podcast from Alex Sanfilippo, who I had on the podcast earlier on. And he talked with Nir Eyal, who's super knowledgeable about not getting distracted and stuff. And, or maybe it wasn't Neriel, maybe it was somebody else. But he basically talked about the quality of an hour and how you need to put, that time in, and it needs to be like consistent. Like you can put in like an hour at a time or like 10 minutes at a time, and that's great. But when the brain really focuses is when you can put in like an hour or more at a time and really block that time out. And the same has been true with me in this year so far in 2021. I'm really trying to build up all these little side stuff I've been doing into businesses or dropping them completely. And when I've made the most progress, it's when I wasn't setting a timer and I just went for it and I just did it, and all of a sudden 2 hours have gone by and it's like, wow, I did all this stuff and it's been really good. But I think that's just something that you learn over time and you get better at. And there's all these different cues, there's all these different things you can do to help you get into the flow state, help you make the most of every single hour you're working on your business. Because it's such a sad thing when you do a workout or you do something like that and you don't really get the fulfillment out of it, and it didn't really go with your long-term vision, because if, let's say, assume you get super successful in the future, it's really important that when you're at that point, you're not going to be doing half of the stuff you're doing. You're going to be focused on completely different things because your focus becomes your life. And so it's really important that you're like taking care of yourself, feeding your business good information, feeding it all these things that are going to help it grow and be a well-oiled machine and be able to keep going on its own. There's this really cool analogy like with this about like, oh yeah, it was like staying in your lane and having like multiple people to run the race at once. Like you can have like one superstar athlete running in your race, but if you own like more than that, you have like more than one sponsored player, your chances of winning go up a lot. And so it helps a lot to have like multiple baskets for your business and multiple things that are, potential winners. And you give them, the attention they need, the direction they need. It's all individual, and then they can go out and perform, and hopefully it goes well for you. I think it's difficult to get started with business, but if you have like a really good team and you have people to encourage you and help you out, and you're not going at it alone, I think anybody can get started with business. I'd encourage you with whatever you are capable of doing, what you're able to do, consider how you could market that and be able to bless the lives of a lot of people and potentially make some income on the side. With the world we live in today, there's really no limit to what we can accomplish. Really, it's all about our focus and gaining traction and then maintaining that traction through having a good system. So that's just my quick thoughts. Business is a lot like being a parent and being a farmer and being an endurance athlete, or owning athletes, like owning a team of athletes, because they represent you, and it's important that they look good and that they're doing good, that they're feeling good, that they're not throwing up everywhere. All right, we'll move on from that. But yeah, I hope that this episode was helpful in some way to kind of make you think of things differently. And I'm going to be taking everything that is in the Google form really personally and also objectively, and we're going to improve the podcast from this point on. I appreciate everybody's support. It is a long journey being a podcaster, but I love it and I want to keep going, and I want to have you guys along for the ride, and hopefully we can inspire a lot of people together. And that's pretty much all I have. So thank you all so much for joining me on this journey, and don't forget to yield today, and it will be a better tomorrow.